had been doing this talk a year ago, literally 5 people in the room would have had a Twitter account. A handful of people would have updated their LinkedIn stuff. So things have changed very rapidly, and that's what we're going to talk about today is the rapid pace of change that's going on in marketing. One of the key things that you'll notice is in the past 10 years, there have been more changes in marketing than in the previous 100. So my dad was an actual madman. He worked on Madison Avenue in the 1960s, all that sort of stuff, worked side by side with David Ogilvy, ended up doing 1 or 2 different kind of key things during the course of his career. Radio was already in when he came on board in the 50s, but TV came on strong, and that was pretty much the big change. In the 1950s, TV kind of came on strong, and he spent the rest of his career kind of doing TV, radio, print. Well, then the late 90s came around. True story. In about 1998, my dad by that time was an old guy and still around, but he was 75 or something like that. And I'm a younger guy. I'm thinking, what does this guy know? It's old school stuff, and it's all about the new stuff. And he came to me and he said, I want to tell you something. During my career, it was all about the creative revolution. In the 60s, Bernbach came along and did the Volkswagen campaigns, things like that. He said that was the big deal, the creative revolution. It's now 1998. The next 10 years are going to be about the media revolution. The change is going to happen in how we distribute content. And I remember thinking at the time, old guy doesn't know what he's talking about. What the heck? It's all about creative. I was a creative guy. Well, lo and behold, he did know what he was talking about. In the last 10 years, we have had more changes happen than in the previous 100. And the reason for that is, of course, what? Say it out loud, louder. The internet. Eric, what's your name? Jane said the internet. She is correct, along with a bunch of other people. So that is exactly what happened. Now, it's just beginning, folks. It's going to keep on going. It's going to keep on going. Because not only is the pace of change speeding up, but all of a sudden, all these new ways to happen, to communicate with people are really scary and exciting at the same time. It is one of those things that is a total revolution in marketing. Because no longer are all the folks in the company side that are in this meeting right now, and all the folks that are on the agency side sitting around going, you know what? We're going to do a positioning statement, we're going to do a brand strategy, and we're going to pump it out on TV, and it's going to rock and roll. That doesn't happen anymore. What's happening now is basically people are going in and saying the consumer is in charge of what's being said about your brand. That's a huge, huge shift. So basically, let's revisit what used to happen and come back to what's going on today. In the old days, remember I was telling you about my dad, the madman? He basically, literally, in 1965, this is a great statistic, in 1965, you could go out and run 3 different commercials on 3 networks, 1 on each network, which would ABC, CBS, and NBC, on prime time and reach 80% of the viewing audience. 3 commercials, 80% of the viewing audience, let's go get a martini. I mean, it was basically that easy. Well, things have changed. Today, in order to accomplish the same thing, you'd have to run over 125 commercials in order to get the same effect. 125. There isn't a marketer on the planet except McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and maybe Walmart who can afford that. Everybody else has to say, okay, how are we going to change things? How are we going to talk to our consumer? And the only way to do that is by sitting down and saying, let's start using new things like social media, like experiential marketing that Garrett's going to talk about later, like SEO that some of the other folks, like inbound marketing that the folks from HubSpot are going to talk about later. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. This is a fascinating time to be in. And in Baylor University, several years ago, they did a taste test. They had a bunch of people in a room, 200 people like this, and they said, we're going to do a blind taste test for you. Just everybody drink it. You don't know which brand it is. And everybody drank it. And it came out 50-50. Half liked Coke, half liked Pepsi. They didn't know which brand. I said, okay, everybody. Now we're going to do a non-blind taste test. We're going to go out and show you which is Coke, show you which is Pepsi. Now tell us which one you like. 75% picked picked Coke. So 75% of the time, even though when it was blind taste test, it was 50-50, 75% when it was not blind was people picked Coke. And the reason for that, if you start thinking about this, is the imagery we associate with Coke. Think about the imagery that is associated with Coke, and it goes very, very deep. What are some images, what is some imagery, brand imagery we associate with Coke? Santa, polar bears, Mean Joe Green, I like to teach the world to sing. Coke owns Santa. Oh my gosh. They own Santa. How much better could it get than to say, we own Santa Claus? Cool opportunities. Well, I mentioned earlier that, that basically humankind has not changed in forever. We are still basically impulsive. We are still driven by emotion. We still rationalize things logically. We still do the same things we've been doing for thousands and millions of years. So bottom line there is you can leverage that by learning about how humans behave, how the brain works, and how to use that knowledge in order to sell more of your product. We're going to talk a little bit about that right now. So let's talk about why and how people buy products. Anybody in here have a Porsche? I hope not. Good. Thank goodness. Because I'm going to have some fun with people who buy Porsches. As you all know, a Porsche is typically bought, I think 93-94% of the time, by a man. Looks a little bit like me, middle-aged, bald, you know. The difference is their checking account is a lot bigger than mine. But why does that guy go out and buy a Porsche? Just holler it out. What's he doing? What's he buying? Louder. Image. Who said that? Excellent. Good. What else? Midlife crisis. Exactly. See, I was in Kansas City and I asked that, and people said, a car. And I was like, no. That's not where we're going here. Exactly, that's what he's doing. He's buying a slice of his previous life. He's making up for whatever shortcoming he has, whatever issues he has, whatever's going on in his life. Thank you for the laugh. And half of you are sitting there going, did he just say shortcoming? Am I thinking the thing that he wants me to think, or am I thinking, is it just me? Am I dirty? You're dirty. I did not mean that at all. But seriously, so what ends up happening is the guy goes out, he buys the Porsche, he comes home, and if he's married, the wife says, what the hell did you just do spending $125,000 on a car? Well, now, it's not an emotional decision anymore. It's very logical. Honey, it's got rack and pinion steering, it's German engineered, it's very safe, it goes fast, all that sort of stuff. Well, the bottom line is, people buy products typically for emotional reasons and rationalize it with logic. And that's one of the things that you can use. When you're sitting around trying to sell your products, figure out what it is that's called the unspoken reason that people buy your product. Because a lot of times, they don't say why they're buying their product, which is why, here's a great quote for you. Henry Ford, who famously, well, he theoretically said this, let's assume he did. He said, the reason I didn't do research into what people wanted when I was building cars is because if I'd asked people what they wanted prior to the invention of the automobile, they would have said a better buggy whip.